I'm Foxy and welcome to my Patreon-sponsored presentation. Today's topic will be on mood boards as creative tools. To start, what is a mood board? Mood boards, sometimes referred to as vision boards, inspiration boards, Pinterest boards, or visual brainstorms, are arrangements of images, materials, pieces of text, colors, etc. that are intended to evoke or project a particular style or concept. They're usually collections of images, samples of compositions, photographs, pictures of objects, any other useful visual meant to serve as inspiration for the visual aesthetics of a project. Mood boards were originally used by graphic designers to establish identities for brands and showcase the aesthetics of a project. So, for example, if they're trying to design a website and their client wants the website to evoke a particular feeling or feature particular colors, this is one way that the client and the designers can brainstorm together and easily be on the same page and have a very fast and easy way to showcase visuals to understand an idea. So instead of a client having to say, well, I want something that feels cool and exciting and also uses the color red and gold and black and kind of leaving the artist to have to make something up and show the client and have them not like it. Well, this is kind of like a first stage of brainstorming where the designer can collect images that fit into the aesthetic that the artist is assuming the client means, and both of them can look at it together and figure it out. Or alternatively, the client can make a mood board of exactly the things that they like they can take screenshots of websites they like, colors they like, different aesthetics, photographs showcasing a tone that they would want in their project, and give it to the artist, and the artist knows exactly what to work with and exactly what the client wants, and then can work within those constraints. So what are some uses of mood boards if you're kind of like a regular person, another artist, not a graphic designer, and this idea is new to you? Well, if you're an artist, this is an excellent way of organizing collections of images and ideas, or a way to set up some inspiration for yourself. So if you are wanting to make a character design or make a certain illustration and you want to kind of like figure out what colors you want to use before you spend a lot of time painting and making mistakes, this is a really excellent way to just lay it out in front of you and see it. If you're a client and you like commissioning artists, this is a really excellent way of showcasing exactly what colors and aesthetics you like, and the artist knows exactly what to work with. Both of these things can also be as niche or as broad as you want them to be. Mood boards are very tailored to exactly the person or the project's needs, so they can be as big, small, specific, or flexible as you want them to be. You don't even need to be an artist or somebody commissioning art to use mood boards. If you're planning a party, a wedding, some kind of themed event where you need a lot of brainstorming to figure out the color coordination, the design of things, excellent way of brainstorming, excellent way of just organizing all these things before you make a big commitment. Additionally, it doesn't have to be just for loose inspiration. Mood boards, especially in the form of a Pinterest board, which I'll cover later, are very excellent ways of just collecting a lot of information. With the internet and present-day tools for boarding and organizing things, this can be a wonderful way to, for example, save a ton of images with interesting poses you want to draw from, or save a bunch of photos of interesting animals or plants that, if you're a concept artist and you're doing creature design, this will be an easy way for you to refer back to it, edit your board, remove things, add things to it. Just a really wonderful visual resource for anyone to use. What are some benefits of mood boarding? Because, you might think, well, can't you just describe in words what you want someone to make you? Well, the trouble with that is that when you just use words to describe something, everyone gets a different image in their head. Even if you just say that something was blue, everyone might be picturing a kind of slightly different color of blue. So mood boards will express a vision way better than words ever could, because everyone will be looking at the same thing. It can also capture really complex themes and ideas, or an overall flow and feel of an idea at a glance. So, if you want an artist to draw something like a sad, edgy cyberpunk setting with a brooding character, if you can provide a lot of visual samples of what that looks like to you, the artist will know exactly what they're working with. It's also a really wonderful way of balancing coordination and creative freedom. And what I mean by this is when you provide a mood board, the artist will still have a lot of room to roam and will be able to extrapolate on it, but because you're providing them with exactly the things you like, you're more inclined to have a successful project that won't need as much revision because you already provided that artist with tons of resources that you know you already like. So that way, there's a balance between the control of the client or whoever the project is for and creative freedom for whoever is making it. Additionally, the process of simply creating a mood board can be so fun and so insightful. It can be a really introspective journey of self-discovery, and you might even find a much deeper understanding of not only your tastes, sensibilities, but also your identity. And I'm going to cover this a little later and even talk about a fun exercise that you can do to do exactly that. But overall, mood boards are just extremely versatile tools. They're tailored to the specific needs of a person or a project. And you can make as few of them, as many of them as you want. They can be as specific or as broad as you want them to be. They're just really excellent tools for inspiration, communication, and just figuring out what you want to do. So now, how do you make a mood board? Well, the traditional mood boards that graphic designers would make when they would pitch projects would be handmade. They would print or find images from magazines, cut them out, and arrange them on a foam core board. So it would be very scrapbooky, and the traditional method would be cut and paste and Mod Podging things together on a poster. This is definitely a very labor-intensive process. If you do like doing that, that is definitely an option though. You can absolutely collage things physically, but if you're like me and you got very little time and you like things being very fast, easy, straightforward, and like tailored to being very organized, my personal favorite way is using Pinterest. Now, what is Pinterest? Pinterest is a website and it describes itself as a visual discovery engine for finding ideas like recipes, home and style inspiration, and more. With billions of pins on Pinterest, you'll always find ideas to spark inspiration. When you discover pins you love, save them to boards to keep your ideas organized and easy to find. Now on Pinterest, a pin is literally just an image. And in short, it's basically an image hosting website that allows you to collect all these images into folders. So everything on Pinterest is usually taken from somewhere else, but the way that you upload to Pinterest is you have to hyperlink it from the source. So a lot of the images you see on there are usually linked from somewhere else, whether it's like DeviantArt, Google search, someone's blog. I've seen, in addition to images, I've seen a lot of like art tutorials on there, and they're linked back to where they came from. So it's just like a really excellent way of just collecting information in one place. Although I primarily use it for mood boarding and resource collecting, just like Pinterest mentioned in their, little tidbit on what they're about. A lot of people use it for recipes. If you like cooking, if you like makeup, literally any hobby, anything under the sun that you can think of, there's probably pins for it, and it's a great way to organize them. So Pinterest is free, fast, easy, really straightforward and intuitive to use, and the image library is really excellent. Oftentimes these images are a lot more visually interesting, artsy, and cool than you would find in like a basic Google search because they're tailored for those exact uses. They're meant to be inspiring. So even if you search something like a cat, you're gonna get a lot of really pretty pictures of cats that were shot by like professional photographers versus like if you do a Google search on cats, you might just end up with like, somebody who took photos with their cell phone, or like it's not very visually interesting in terms of color or whatever. But yeah, and like if you can't find what you're looking for on Pinterest, you can also pin your own images. So, if you want to make a mood board for your character and include the reference sheet on it, you can just upload it yourself and make a pin board that includes that information. Another benefit is that there's a lot of users, so you can also view other people's mood boards that can help in inspiring you and making your own. And that's my personal favorite method. It's also excellent for a first-time user because you now have access to all these images that you'll find. And definitely going to go into even more detail on this, but that's a really kind of overall view of Pinterest and what it's for. But some other options for making mood boards, canva.com is kind of like a graphic design oriented website, and they have a tool for making the single spreadsheet mood board, so kind of more like the classical mood board. That's one layout with, 5 or 10 images on it, around there. It basically lets you drag and drop and customize and add text or whatever you would like. Adobe Spark is very similar. It's an Adobe program. One that people probably don't know as much is PowerPoint, which is what I'm actually using to make this presentation. The most recent updates of PowerPoint make it so that, like, if you drag and drop some images, it can kind of help recommend you some layouts, which are really cool. Some people like to drag and drop things into Word docs, or, like I mentioned earlier, the entirely traditional method of creating by hand, cutting out, and gluing images together for a collage is another option if that's interesting to you and you like scrapbooking. But all these other options are best for small, limited mood boards that are presented in a single spread. This also would require you to find all these images yourself first, and they're only the tools to put together images as opposed to a tool for browsing and inspiring. That's where Pinterest will come into play, and even if you want to use those other options to create a mood board, Pinterest is a very excellent way of finding those creative images to inspire you. Another benefit of Pinterest is that you can add like hundreds, if not thousands, of images to one board, and you can scroll through them, while the other options are a lot more limited. Pinterest is by far my favorite, and it's been the easiest to use and very flexible in my experience. So here's some examples. These are mood boards that I've pulled directly from a Google search to just show you. You can kind of see in the bottom one, it's kind of cropped from the layout of my PowerPoint, but that was made with Adobe Spark. But mood boards and how I first found out about them, actually, I was on Tumblr as like a teenager, and they were very popular for people to set up the aesthetics of their blogs, or kind of like creating an inspiration board for a character. So, this first one is kind of like these soft, like really calm pink aesthetics. The middle one is kind of like more fun and fruity and just greens and reds, complementary colors. And like the last one is very obviously branded after like Ravenclaw, Harry Potter, and those like blue kinds of aesthetics. So here are just some crop-ins on some very simple mood boards that were pre-made, and I just found them through a Google search. So that's one way of finding examples. I'm going to go into some more detail about all of those methods of creating mood boards that I mentioned just a couple slides ago. So for your single sheet spread mood boards with limited images, here's a little screenshot of what the work layout for Canva looks like. They give you some kind of like templates that you can pick from if you would like, or you can just drag and drop your own images and do a spread. It's honestly just like having a little, digital cut and paste board in front of you. And I've been told it's very intuitive and easy to use. I've actually personally not used this, but this was something that I found when I was researching for this presentation, and I talked to someone who uses it. And it can be used to set your aesthetic tones or even create temporary character reference sheets. So if creating a mood board like what you saw in the previous images isn't necessarily your cup of tea, you can actually use this tool to create a temporary reference sheet for characters that are a work in progress. And again, this is a tool that will put together images that you've already found, and it's not an image search engine. So if you already have all of the content that you want to use, this is a way for you to put it all together. Another benefit of Canva is that you can add notes directly onto your page, and this might be a preferable style of mood boarding for some people if you prefer to add notes that are immediately visible. And it can, again, it's really excellent for if you need like a temporary reference sheet. Here's an example board created by Andy Trunks, and this was for their Tauren character. Here they added some references of the character from World of Warcraft, along with some kind of like notes about clothing aesthetics or the character personality. And this is a really excellent tool to use if you're, say, commissioning someone for a first-time drawing of a character that doesn't really have a reference sheet yet, or just like providing an idea for an artist to use with a lot of creative freedom. So here's one way somebody used Canva. Mood boards with PowerPoint. So small mood boards can be made really easily with PowerPoint. Here's one to the right that I made. I pulled some images from a mood board I already had on my Pinterest. The cool thing about PowerPoint that I discovered just recently in the past few years as I've been doing presentations for school and stuff is that the recent update supports artificial intelligence generated layout suggestions. So if you kind of like start typing something or drag some images on it, it will start generating ideas on how to lay them out. And it's honestly so useful and saved me so much time, and it has helped me make really wonderfully composed, nice looking presentations. But it's also a really fast, fun, and easy way to just, drag some images into a square and then it arranges them for you in a really pretty way like it did on the right. But again, just like Canva, it requires you to have already selected your images. I would assume it's a little bit more limited than Canva because Canva is made for mood boarding, but this is definitely a lot easier to use and more artsy than using Word doc or something to just drag and drop images, which is like, not as artsy or fun or easy to use. But yeah, I mean, PowerPoint definitely does have its own limitations, and it can take some kind of like playing around with it and manually plugging and chugging stuff to get it to spit out what you want it to. But it's definitely like another excellent resource that I know that not very many people know about. And honestly, it's made it a joy to make presentations because they end up looking so much nicer than if I had to do everything by myself by hand. And now we're going to talk about starting a Pinterest mood board. So the first thing you got to do is create and set up your Pinterest account. You're going to be prompted to select topics of interest to help your homepage get started, but don't worry too much about it because Pinterest is like a search engine and what it shows you is shaped by what you're already searching. The process of making an account and getting going with it is pretty straightforward and intuitive, but if you're having trouble, you can just look up tutorials on it. There's lots of them that have already been done before. I recommend that when you're starting a Pinterest mood board, you think about the project you want to make a mood board for, and you start searching all the relevant topics. This can be literally anything, and it's highly dependent on exactly what your project is for. Once you start that search, add all the images that best fit your tastes and needs for your project to a new mood board. Pinterest allows for a lot of customizing and organizing. You can have as many or as few mood boards as you want, or Pinterest boards as they're called on Pinterest, and you have the option of even making them public or private. So here's a little screenshot of my own Pinterest account, and you can kind of see my icon, my name, you can add a bio, people follow you on there, even though I really don't even use that function. I only use it for me. But you can see there's like a folder for all pins, so everything that you've ever saved is just kind of thrown in one pile in that one. I never opened that. But all your boards are basically like folders for everything. The things with like a little lock icon, like the couples poses, the poses folders, you can make certain boards private. So if you're working on some kind of project that has an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement that nobody can see and you don't even want people to access your inspiration board for it, you can absolutely make those private and they're going to be visible only to you. But yeah, you can have boards for literally anything. I have a lot of boards for clothing, my characters' clothing styles. I have a board for just faces if I ever want to like practice drawing people. I also have boards for like specific animals, whether like birds or felines, and I also have boards for very specific projects. So I've had projects in art college where I have to make a very specific illustration, and then I'll research my inspiration for it and add it to a mood board for that specific project. Benefits of using Pinterest. I already kind of talked about these, but I'm going to mention them again. It's good for large boards or small ones. Like, anyone can make a small board. You can make it with any way, but Pinterest is the best one for large ones. It'll take you a lot less time to make a huge Pinterest board than it would to actually make like spreadsheets using Canva or cutting things out. Pinterest is super excellent for really, really quickly hoarding a lot of images. In 5 minutes, you could collect like 50 images. I'm not even kidding. But it's flexible, it's diverse, it's really simple, and it's really easy. A great way for organizing tons of information. You can also add notes to pins on your board. This is really fun, and it might be really useful if you have a very small pin board with only a couple images that are very important to something you want. So when you open a specific board that you have and you click on there's like a little edit button that pops out with a pencil. When you open it, it gives you the option to add notes to it. So if you, for example, have a photo of a particular outfit that you want an artist to use for a drawing, but you want to note, I don't like these shoes, please use different shoes, you can totally type that in and let your artist know to make sure they check the notes on all of the images. As I mentioned, Pinterest has some really excellent artsy images that are perfect for aesthetic inspiration. It can help you discover what your tastes are. And if you can't find exactly what you're looking for, but you can find it somewhere else, you can also upload and pin your own images, which makes it really, really useful. It's also not limited to aesthetic mood boards and photos of things. Lots of resources like animal photography, even like medical diagrams, tutorials, drawing resources, recipes, they're all available on Pinterest. So you can honestly make a Pinterest board that's just full of resources that you can find later. And since all the images on Pinterest come from somewhere else and the website generally requires you to hyperlink back to where you found it, this is a really great way to have a board of, say, a bunch of drawing tutorials, and when you open the image of the tutorial, you can go to the artist's original source and read any additional information they added about the tutorial. And it's a lot easier than fiddling with bookmarks on your computer or having to download and save things to your device and taking up space on your device. The algorithm on Pinterest also suggests similar content based on what you're looking for, and it makes research really streamlined and super easy. It allows for some really excellent discoveries. An experience I commonly have on Pinterest is I am looking for something in particular, so I'll search something like, I don't know, like knee-high boots and a sweater dress. But the exact dress that I have in mind isn't really popping up in the search results. There's an ocean of dresses that aren't what I am thinking about. But I scroll through and I find one image that is as close to my idea as it is in that initial selection. Well, when you click that image, all of the suggested images that pop up below it are similar to that image. So when you click through these things, it suggests you similar things, and it can really help you quickly find what you're looking for, or even just discover some new things, because some of the recommended similar things might be different than what you originally thought you wanted. It also has that really big user base, so sometimes I'm looking for a certain aesthetic, I'll literally search goth aesthetic, and then several pre-made boards that other people have made will pop up, and I will browse through other people's boards and add the images I like to my board. So that's a really fun and easy way of basically having had someone else do the bulk of the work for you, and you can literally just slide right into the aesthetic you like, and then even more specifically handpick the exact images that you want. And then the fun yet dangerous Pinterest rabbit hole. What is the Pinterest rabbit hole? I'm kind of going to cover it honestly in the next slide with this exercise. Because you might be asking me, well, this sounds fun and all, but what if I don't even know what my aesthetic is? How do you even find out what your aesthetic is? Well, here's a way to discover your visual identity and your personal aesthetics. This was an exercise that was given to me when I was in art school. So the class I had was called Artist as Entrepreneur, and it was taught by Lydia Fenwick and Ashley Eisenicki, also known as Life Illustration and Miss You Pacey on Instagram. So the entire premise of this class was about branding yourself as an independent artist and kind of like marketing yourself as an artist. So this activity was made to help aid us in how to brand ourselves, because branding is basically establishing your visual identity that makes you unique and makes people recognize you as who you are. So when I was first tasked with making my own brand, I was like, what do you mean? I don't even know what my brand is. Like, all of the art I make always ends up looking a little different. Like, I don't even know what I like. Like, I feel like I don't have a cohesive visual identity. Like, how am I going to do this? So here's the activity they made for us. If you're unsure of what your aesthetics are, try this exercise. It's perfect for a first-time Pinterest board, and it'll introduce you to the concept. So, open Pinterest and make a new board, and call it My Aesthetics, or My Vision Board, whatever you want to call it. So what you're going to do is you're going to search the things you like. Think about who you are and what you like. Hobbies, places you like, colors, aesthetics, clothing, themes, holiday subjects, literally anything. Anything that you deem part of your identity that's important to you, and things that you like. Once you get your search results, add to your board every single image that you were instinctively drawn to and that at most stands out from the sea of images. Now, this should be an extremely intuitive process and should be really quick. Don't think about it. Don't think about it at all. If the image doesn't grip your attention, don't add it. If you're on the fence, should I add this one? Just skip it. This needs to be really, really intuitive because you want to tap into your subconscious. So the images that you're going to add are things that will pop out in a whole pile of images and immediately just grab your attention. All those, add them. And don't stop until you have at least 100 images. Honestly, more. Shoot for 200. The more the merrier, because what ends up happening is that even though you're looking through a whole different amount of like topics, colors, different things, you might be feeling like the things that you're adding have nothing in common, but once you put them in the context of all together and see an ocean of images, you're going to start making the collections of how they belong together. And this will provide you with an in-depth understanding of what your subconscious tastes are, which you can then be consciously aware of and have them inform your creative choices. And to mention from the last slide, the Pinterest rabbit hole. Now, because Pinterest will recommend you things based on what you're browsing, what ends up happening is that you can get trapped on Pinterest for hours at a time. I've honestly been stuck making my inspiration boards for hours at a time before I even start drawing, because it ends up recommending you such beautiful, gripping, captivating images that are so tailored to your tastes that you can't look away. Like, you keep getting so excited that you're finding the next image, and you like get so excited that you're discovering things about yourself that you just end up going down that rabbit hole and chasing the Pinterest bunny and seeing where it takes you. But I never think it's a waste of time. I definitely think that it always makes me feel really inspired. It's really fun, and it helps me learn some more about myself. Now, here's some examples from my own vision board. This is the first board I made. I honestly just keep adding to it. I haven't really edited it. But you can see kind of like, you know, on the left, I was looking up flowers because I like flowers and maybe like some, I don't know, there's like some cityscapes. And on the right, I was obviously like looking up mountains. But what you'll notice is that even though these images are different, like one is flowers and the other is mountains, they do have things in common. Like, there is a sense of color and a sense of contrasts that do feel like they belong together. I ended up discovering through this exercise when I did it the first time that I have a really specific aesthetic for what kinds of colors, compositions, and, you know, color value contrasts I gravitate to. And when I was scrolling through all the images I'd collected, I found that they look like they belong together. Here's some further down a scroll from here. I also really like cafe aesthetics, so I added a lot of stuff that corresponds to really cute and, like, you know, quirky, attractive images to me that are in cafes. On the right, again, some more flowers, some rocks and some gems, some pretty skies, but you can definitely see just from these spreads that there are a lot of colors in common, and there is a distinct visual identity that's happening here. And while I was making this, I, you know, wouldn't even thought that they would have had so much in common until I finally looked at all these images together. Here is a screenshot of some of my other boards. You can kind of see that I have ones that are dedicated to art, I have ones that are dedicated to specific, fashion tastes of a particular character. I have ones that are for art tips, prop inspiration, some artistic movements like Art Deco, Art Nouveau. I also have ones that are designated to some aesthetics like a glow aesthetic, or I have a board of just cities and like cityscapes to serve for inspiration if I ever wanted to, paint a setting that's in a city. I have, if you look at the far right second row, Overgrown was a concept art and visual development project I did my final semester in college. And I did like a really extensive mood board of all of the visual language and inspiration I wanted for it, and that was a really excellent tool for keeping me inspired while I worked on this project, and also helping me identify the exact visual identity of the project. Really useful. And honestly, like, however you use Pinterest is very much unique to you, and I really encourage everyone to try it out. What are some ways of using it for commissioning art? Well, as I mentioned so many times, everything is definitely tailored exactly to someone's unique needs, so the way that you like working with mood boards the most might differ from me or the next person. One way is that when you create a specific pin board for your character, it can encompass their exact unique like aesthetics, mood, personality, fashion sense, hobbies, all in one. Personally, the way I like to commission art, when I commission something artistic freedom, I will provide an artist with my mood board that captures my personal aesthetic tastes, which you saw the screenshots from with the mountains and the flowers. Those tell an artist what colors I like, and then I link the artist mood boards for the particular character that I want to commission, their fashion sense. Because all the characters that I like to get the most art of, I have some boards for them that showcase, here are the clothes they wear. And in combination, an artist knowing, well, here are the colors that my client likes and here are the clothes that their character wears, it gives them a lot of room for freedom, but I'll also know it'll be exactly something I like because everything on those boards are things that I exactly like. Now, some people might like to format it a different way. I've seen people who will just put it all together, or they don't want to use their overall personal aesthetic color choices, but they want the aesthetic color choices of that particular character. So they can make a mood board that's the character reference sheet, the aesthetics, moods, and tones that encompass the character, and also some clothing options for the character. So for example, if you have a really moody, gritty character, or for example, I have a character, he's a bear, and he's kind of like, he's like a Russian mob bear, and he also works in a deli, and he gets into a lot of fights. So on his mood board, I had some photos of bears. I had some photos of some delis, some food. I had photos of, bloody knuckles. I had some photos of like kind of like some city or misty settings. I had some photos of like whiskey and cigars, because that's like something that the character likes. So that's another way to do it. Like, you can make a board that encompasses everything about the character and have them for each individual characters, or you can kind of mix and match them like I do. You can also, this is another thing that's really fun. You can, if you have a music playlist, this can be like your own personal taste playlist or a playlist for a specific character. If you provide an artist with music in addition to like a mood board, you're just adding even more creative fuel. Artists are like really visual people, and like a lot of us listen to music when we're working, and music just goes hand in hand with creativity, and just certain songs can really set a tone or a mood and just really inspire some interesting visuals. This is like another way to make it go even further. You can make mood boards, and then you can also make a playlist for your character and just hand those off to an artist and let them make whatever inspires them. But, ultimately you organize things in the way that makes the most sense to you and who you're working with. Definitely some artists might have different preferences. For me, I prefer the Pinterest mood board, and I like working with tons of images. I want people to give me a mood board with like at least 50 images, maybe more. But I also know people who prefer to work with the limited single spread mood boards like the examples I showed you in the beginning. You might just have to ask your artist if they have a preference, or if they don't care, just do whatever feels the most natural to you. Some inspiration is honestly better than none, so just go with your gut. Now, I wanted to also showcase what makes a strong mood board and what makes a weak mood board when it comes to artistic inspiration, particularly when it comes to, working as an artist or working with an artist if you're a client. I do want to note, though, this is entirely subjective and it's based around my own personal experiences and tastes and preferences. Ultimately, mood boarding is literally just like art. There is no right or wrong way. It's honestly what you want to make the most of it. But I'm just going to talk about some of my observations and what I personally think makes for better versus weaker mood boards. So the strong and the most useful. I think mood boards that are the most useful are comprised of images that have a strong sense of color identity or color theory. Usually these are images that are professionally shot and then edited. You want images that have a strong sense of mood or evoke some kind of feeling. These images should give you some kind of feeling or be compelling in some kind of way. And they should also ideally be images that are well composed. This is a topic for another presentation sometime, but composition is basically the way images are arranged. And there are definitely different kinds of rules for composition and arranging images that are kind of like time-tested and proven to be appealing. So strong images that serve for really great artistic inspiration will be composed in ways that are artsy and interesting and make a viewer want to look at them. Most or all your photos in a strong mood board should feel like they're professionally designed and like they would fit well into a magazine or a movie. Basically, you want artsy or design-oriented images, things that look fun and quirky and are inspiring. Now, what makes a weak and less useful mood board? Basically, everything that's the opposite of a strong mood board. You don't want images with weak or absent color identity. You don't want images that have an absence of a distinct mood or feeling. You don't want the image to just be like meh. You also don't want a lack of interesting compositions. Basically, photos that look like they were taken by someone with zero art or photography experience or like they were shot through a potato in a moving car is not what you want. Additionally, if there's only a handful of these less useful images, the mood board will be even weaker. So kind of like I was talking about having a lot of options to pick from and a lot of variety, if you not only have, images that don't have as much of an identity, but also you have a very few selection of them, they're not going to be as useful for an inspiration tool because they're not very inspired. Now, let me give you some examples. Due to the pandemic, I haven't really been traveling much, so I didn't really have any images of, me taking pictures of mountains out of a moving car, but I did have a lot of images of things I've cooked recently, or, just stuff from around my kitchen. So, here's some things I found from my camera roll. Top left, I have a KitchenAid. Top middle, I have some fried eggs. Yes, I do put that many spices on my eggs. I have some tacos, I have a stack of pancakes, I have a steak, and I have some homemade ramen that I made. I mean, these images are just really clearly shot by someone just taking a picture of their food to text it to someone. Like, that was literally the context of that these images were shot. Are they bad pictures? Well, kind of yes. Like, they're not very well composed. They're not very interesting. There isn't really well thought out lighting. This is literally just like photos of food in like, my kitchen or my living room. I didn't really think about these when I took these pictures. And sure, they showcase eggs, they showcase steak and ramen and tacos. But do they really make me feel anything? Not really. Since these were the images I had, to make a more accurate comparison, I tried to find images of these same foods on Pinterest. Now, these were kind of arranged by just PowerPoint spitting out its layout at me, so they're in a different order, but just like the images of my own food, here I also have ramen, pancakes, some egg, some tacos, I have a KitchenAid, and I have a steak. But if you notice, the colors in these images, the light, the way they're composed and laid out, radically different. Also, unfortunately, I can't show you the whole layout of the images because they're cropped into squares, but a lot of these were like vertical rectangular compositions, and they were very excellently composed with things around them. Why? because they were made by food designers. They were made by people who had to set up these images to take a picture for, like a magazine or like an advertisement. So they're very well thought out and very artistically planned. So here's just a quick example of weak mood board versus stronger mood board. And maybe as an even stronger one, and to kind of show you the potential of Pinterest, here's just a bunch of food images I threw together in like 5 minutes in a mood board titled Food. And this is a really good example of what some strong images look like. You can see that these are really wonderfully well composed and thought out. Everyone who took these photos set them up with a lot of love and care and understanding of artistic principles of design. And these are the exact kinds of images that you want to inspire you. Even if you're someone who's never had like a formal art education and you don't know the principles of art and design and what composition is and what compositional flow is, these images already use these elements. So if you're literally just looking at images that are strong and well composed, you're going to start subconsciously and intuitively picking these things up and incorporating them into the way you work. So this is also another highlight of how mood boards are such excellent tools, because you're collecting resources and information from people who are very skilled at what they do, and you're now referencing and using those. Your work is going to slowly start getting stronger, even if you don't really have a conscious understanding of principles of design, because you're looking at things that do have an excellent use of the principles of design. And since the mood board you make is going to be directed by the things you instinctively and subconsciously gravitate to, you're going to be making things that you like that are stronger than what they would have been had you not used these additional resources. Here are some examples of mood boards that are used for design. So here on the left, this says a branding mood board for a Bodoni. And this kind of shows you the far more like traditional and like original use of mood boards by graphic designers. Here you have a brand being established. It even says up there brand vision board. So this looks like, I want something thoughtful, intellectual, like an office setting, something that feels very warm and sophisticated, but also something that feels really retro, really classic. Like it feels like it's linograph or like printed with a typewriter. So you even see there's samples of not only kind of like the setting aesthetic of an office space, there's a little bit of kind of like fashion sense included, color branding, but there's also a lot of typography on here. This is an excellent showcase of branding for a website or for a new business, a new corporation, because including samples of text, I know this is getting more into the topic of graphic design, but type says a lot about something, and type and letter forms have a lot of their own aesthetics, so these are things that are included a lot on mood boards for branding or websites. So if you are someone who's thinking of making a website, this is a really excellent way to brainstorm for it. Go on Pinterest, look up fonts. There's tons of fonts. I even used that exactly for a graphic design class I had in college. And you save all the fonts that you like best. And once you're done, you can look at everything you like all in one place. On the right is an interior design mood board. Another excellent use of mood boards that are used in like the professional industry. They're used very commonly to stage homes or set up photography for magazines. And you can kind of see how all of these images on this mood board, even though they're pretty different from each other, and some things feel a little bit more beachy and some things feel a little bit more like autumn oriented, they feel like they belong together. And for me, like this definitely feels like a cohesively branded like home decor thing that spans different seasons, because I can definitely see like on the left it's more towards a summery feel, progressing through something more springtime oriented, than leaning into like fall. But it definitely has a very cohesive color identity. Now here's an example of some spooky vibes boards. These are some mood boards that I found just through a Google search. And this is also a way for me to showcase how different things can pop into people's heads when you say, oh, I want something that's spooky. Well, what flavor of spooky that you want? Because right here are 3 different flavors of spooky. I think you can definitely make an argument that each of these has elements of being, spooky, a little eerie, a little creepy, but they're very different flavors of it. The left definitely has a lot more contrast, a black and red aesthetic. It feels a little bit sensual. It feels like kind of like, you know, a little chaotic, or like a baddie, like a bad boy or a bad girl type of aesthetic. The middle one, definitely a lot softer, light colors, as opposed to being dark. Things are very soft, bright. There's a sense of light, but it's kind of like an eerie, ethereal, magical, kind of fairy flavor of spookiness that has a lot more based in the earth and nature. And then on the far right, you have something that is again spooky, but has more of a flavor of the occult, autumn. There's like, some witchcrafty implications in it. So here's just one example of how a mood board can specify the exact flavor of what you're going for, because all three of these are spooky vibes. But yeah, these are also examples of those like small single spread aesthetic mood boards, and you can find these with a Google search so easily. They were so common on Tumblr when I was a teenager, and this was honestly like the way I first found out about mood boards. And if you think these are well composed and they capture the specific moods and color aesthetics, they're very excellent jumping off points for an illustration. I definitely think these little boards like this, they're really good for inspiring, the first stages of a character design, or like an entire illustration. So if you want a illustration with this kind of aesthetic, you can provide this sheet for your artist. Or if you want them to create a character design that captures these ideas, they can absolutely use that for exactly that. And then the last thing I want to talk about that I touched upon is that Pinterest boards can be used as resource and collection tools. And I just kind of wanted to show you some ways that I've used them. I have so many boards. So in the top left was a board I made while I was in my graphic design class. And that one, we had to make some badges, and I was basically collecting the types of graphic design that is my flavor of graphic design. Because out of a sea of options, I wasn't really sure what my tastes were, and that really helped me figure out what my taste was, and also gave me a lot of inspiration to work from when I was making my own designs. On the top right here is a mood board for prop design inspiration. My final semester in college, I was working on a concept art project that was very collaborative, and one of the assignments we had to do is design a lot of props for a fantasy setting. And it was really hard for me to come up with ideas with nothing to reference, so I was looking up a lot of really cool, amazing concept art, and using that to serve as inspiration for me. Bottom left is a little screenshot of my board for pose ideas. You can see all these people sitting. I literally had to draw a character sitting, and I saved a bunch of images of the people that I liked, how they were sitting. And if you scroll further down, obviously like the poses change. It's so funny when you scroll through these boards, they're definitely shaped by exactly what I was looking up in that specific moment. And then on the far right, that's a little bit of a screenshot from my art inspiration mood board. I do a lot of fantasy art outside of like the things that I'll post to like Twitter and like my Patreon. But I was working on, I think from this particular screenshot, it was kind of like a dragonborn fighting a manticore in a gladiator ring, and it definitely had some kind of like Greco-Roman inspiration, so those are the things I was saving, and I need a reference for armor and the way kind of like light will interact on metal, so I was saving a lot of examples of, hey, here are these perfect reference images for how light and metal interact, and I didn't have to worry about clogging up my computer with saving these images, and I could have them in a really easily organized way. I mentioned that project before, Overgrown, my final semester, collaborative concept art project. The theming of that project, it was definitely very like jungle oriented. The concept was kind of like the world is reclaimed by nature after a cataclysmic event, and there was a cultural focus on kind of like Southeast Asian cultures. So I had a lot of resources from India, Indonesia, some from Vietnam, a lot of temples, and it was just a very like rainforesty and overgrown jungle aesthetic. And I was also wanting to invent a lot of new creatures, plants, and things. So here are some screenshots of different places I scrolled through. So you can just see how I was using Pinterest as a tool to collect all of the interesting visual resources that I want to use for this project. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you lasted through that whole presentation, I hope it was enjoyable, I hope it was insightful, and has helped you gain a better understanding of not only what mood boards are, but how they can be useful to you, and I hope that you can create some cool things with them. If there was anything that I didn't really cover or something that you have any questions about, please don't hesitate to let me know. I will be more than happy to answer any questions and comments or any follow-ups. But yeah, thank you again for watching, and happy mood boarding.